Tay, 11 May 1945. Nuremberg, First Freight Yard. A 17-year-old apprentice writes into a stolen ledger. These rails carry people to their deaths, and they carry my bread. I am kept alive by what I must not say. He signs Karl. No surname. The page is thin. The pencil is a stub. He uses the ledger because it is there, because the station office has been shelled open and rained on, because paper is paper in May 1945. The line is dangerous. It implicates the company that feeds him. It implies a knowledge no one is prepared to own in the open air. It is a private thesis. It will sit between inventory columns for coal wagons and locomotive numbers and the dates and times of trains that ran on time through a disaster. The yard around him is a landscape of rubble and twisted track. The Americans call it the marshalling yard. The Wehrmacht called it a target. The RAF called it an aiming point. There are wagons on their sides like dead insects. There are piles of brick 11 meters high where a row of houses stood last year. There are women in scarves moving stones into barrows. Trümmerfrauen, the newspapers will call them, rubble women. In this moment, they are women with hands that bleed. The mathematics of rubble starts with the ratio of intact walls to open sky. In 1943, it was a city. In 1945, it is ruin. An occupation report from the Office of Military Government for Bavaria will note that 70% of Nuremberg's built area has some level of destruction. A Bundeshauptstadt, this is not. It is a place of cellars, of missing staircases, of photos nailed to charred door frames. The arithmetic of missing persons is posted on boards outside police stations. Names, last seen if found alive, if found dead, if found at all. Karl's father left on the train in 1942 with a rifle. His mother did not survive the raid of 10 September 1944. He writes that in the ledger too, in a column meant for destination. The Americans enter Nuremberg on 20 April. The war officially ends on 8 May. The day after the surrender, curfew starts. The painted sign outside the yard lists hours. No one is to be on the street after 9 o'clock. No German may carry a weapon. No gatherings above 5 persons. The town crier is gone. A jeep with a bullhorn announces things in 2 languages. German words are careful words. Americans don't want apologies. They want compliance. An Allied intelligence summary says the population is broken, compliant, fearful, hungry, fearful, hungry. Fear of retribution is not abstract. A woman's hair is shaved on the corner for having smiled at a man in uniform of the wrong side. An NSDAP Ortsgruppenleiter is beaten to death outside the Gauhaus by men who do not give names. A rumor goes through the yard that an SS man has been hanged from a lamppost near the Pegnitz. Rumors are a currency of fear when the other currency loses its value. Karl wears the armband of the railway. It is a talisman. The company becomes a parent. In the Reichsbahn, uniforms confer permission. After 8 May, the Americans keep the trains running if they can. Military government railway service officers sit in the dispatch office. They drink black coffee from tin mugs. They ask for lists, for timetables, for locomotive numbers and route capacities. The papers pile up. A British railway officer will later write in an occupation report that railway personnel are disciplined, apolitical in function, invaluable in service. The company has dormitories for apprentices, bunks in drab rows. Karl is a ledger number inside that system. His job is to walk tracks and chalk on wagon sides what the load is, what the destination should be. If the axle boxes are hot, he is thin. Everyone is thin. The hunger begins before the trees leaf out. It sharpens in the winter to come. The hunger winter of 1946-47 is remembered because the word says it out loud. In the American zone, an occupation report estimates daily calories available to civilians at between 1,000 and 1,500. In Nuremberg in January 1947, it sometimes falls lower. The mathematics of hunger has decimals. It is the difference between black bread and no bread on Thursday. It is the fat ration measured in grams, a chalk mark on a ration card. It is a queue that begins at 4 in the dark for a rumor of potatoes. It is a kilogram if you bring your own sack. It is the difference between a man with cigarettes and a man with nothing. Cigarettes become currency. A report in the OMGUS Weekly Intelligence Summary notes in late 1946 that a single American cigarette can buy 2 kilos of potatoes on the rural black market. Lucky Strike is a number. Chesterfield is a value. The arithmetic of exchange is remorseless. A woman trades a ring for 10 packs of Camels. A scrap dealer trades copper for soap. Carl watches a man take apart a wagon brake assembly to sell the bolts for meat. He writes in the ledger, Wagon 23, 1148, missing 2 bolts. He writes in his notebook, Hunger shows every motive. It is a war of small thefts. In the freight yard, trains still come and go. American trains bring sacks of flour, tinned meat, powdered milk. The packages are stamped with USA in block letters. A boy stares at a tin with a picture of a cow. Care packages arrive after 1946 from American churches and families. In letters preserved in a church archive, recipients write, Thanks for the shoes, thanks for the coffee, we pray for you. The portraits on those letters are of faces that look like Carl's, only rounder. The coal trains are guarded now. At night, shadow figures climb onto wagons with sacks and throw down lumps of coal to companions below. Cold makes criminals. An Allied report calls it pilferage. A woman in a settled street calls it survival. On Carl's second ledger page, he writes a line that he keeps covered with his hand when anyone walks past. We are paid to rebuild what we once carried to ruin. He means more than bricks and rails. The company taught him that schedules are objective, that a train is a train, that the job is to move weight from point A to point B, that a wagon is a number. He has seen old entries that list Sonderzug to Auschwitz and Theresienstadt. He does not write those words in full. He writes S-Zug to Oswi, Brezi. He does not show anyone. The rubble women keep working. They move bricks to the side and clean the mortar and stack them on pallets. A local decree by the city in September 1945 orders all women between 15 and 50 to report for rubble work 2 days a week. An Allied occupation report admires the spirit of the women, a phrase that will turn to a myth by the 1950s. Photographs show them smiling for the camera, but the oral histories recorded in the 1990s carry different sentences. We were exhausted. We did not have gloves. The dust was everywhere in our mouths. In the yard, a woman's shoulder strap breaks and the bricks tumble like water, and for a moment she sobs in silence, then bends and lifts again. Denazification begins as paper. It becomes doors opening and closing. It organizes guilt by check marks. In the American zone, the Fragebogen, the 131 questions, runs to pages on past affiliations, donations, offices held, trips taken, books read, newspapers subscribed to. The Sprüchkammer hearings assign categories: I Hauptschuldige, major offenders, 2 Belastet offenders, 3 Minderbelastet, lesser offenders, IV Mittelfer followers, 4 Mittelfer followers, V Entlastet exonerated. The mathematics of guilt is institutional. It is columns and percentage. Zone, by 1949, out of millions processed, the largest category is Mittelfer. Followers. Carl watches older men at the yard fill out the forms with careful hands. Men who were in the party in 1937 become men who joined under pressure in 1939. Men who once wore the brown shirt on Sundays become men who had no choice if they wanted to feed their families. A denazification file in the Staatsarchiv has an affidavit with an almost comic name for a legal device: Perselschein, a Persel certificate, a washing clean. A neighbor writes that Herr K. was always against the Nazis, even if he paid his dues. The Spruchkammer stamps Mitläufer. The man keeps his desk. Who does not keep a desk? The arithmetic of the exceptions is severe. Ideologues with public faces. SS men with photographs. Camp personnel. A Kreisleiter whose speeches are still on file. A judge who sentenced people to death in 1944. Some go to prison, a few to Landsberg. Others are barred from office. For a while. The system needs teleprinters to click and trains to run. A U.S. Occupation Memorandum from 1947 states the need plainly. Stability and recovery require usage of technicians regardless of past lesser affiliations. The phrase lesser affiliations is the official way to say the majority. The mathematics of rebuilding meets the mathematics of guilt in a compromise called December. Karl is too young for the hearings. He is old enough to stand in a line to register for work, to be counted by the new authorities at the end of every month. He is too young to carry the heavy wooden chairs into the denazification hall. He carries them anyway. He runs errands for Americans and Germans alike. He is a body that can lift. Displaced persons camps sit on the edge of the town like mirrors. The DP camp at Langwasser occupies the drained barracks of the old party rallies. The one at Firth is a former factory. Bergen-Belsen, in the British zone 2 hours by train, becomes a word in the newspapers that Germans pretend not to read. The occupation policy has two parts. It separates victims from perpetrators. It also puts victims within sight of those who might prefer them invisible. Allied intelligence summaries are blunt. German populace displays varying degrees of knowledge and denial of crimes. A list of questions is standardized for screenings in the theaters. Were you aware of concentration camps? Do you think Jews were treated badly? Do you think Germany bears responsibility? The percentages rise and fall with time. A report in late 1946 notes that a plurality think Nazism was a good idea badly carried out. Numbers become a defense. Karl rides a bicycle past Langwasser. He sees men with numbers on their arms standing in a group smoking. He notices they do not look at him. He notices the arms first, then the faces, then the fact that he has seen them in line at his station's soup kitchen. He thinks, we are sharing bread. He thinks, we are not sharing stories. He writes in his notebook, they carry numbers on skin. I carry numbers on skin. I carry numbers on paper. Both are indelible. He does not say this to anyone. It is a dangerous sentence when the bakery queue is 8 hours long. The expellees arrive in waves. They come with suitcases and handcarts and sometimes cows. They come from Silesia, from East Prussia, from the Sudetenland, from cities whose names are suddenly foreign. A Bundesarchiv record of rail traffic in 1946 shows hundreds of special trains labelled Flüchtlingstransport. The exact numbers vary with the month, but the arithmetic is blunt. By 1950, some 12 million Germans are on different ground than the earth they were born on. Many arrive with nothing. Many arrive to places with almost nothing. The mathematics of rooms is immediate. There are walls, there are doors, there are people. A town of 23,000 receives 11,000 newcomers. The room registration office prints forms by the tens of thousands. One ledger line is Karl's, for the widow of J, one corner in a kitchen to be shared with 3. The official word is Einweisung, requisition. The feeling in the assigned rooms is not official. Tension follows. The expellees are called names behind their backs: Polacken, Refos, Berman. They bring songs and recipes and grief. They bring stories of Czechs with rifles at night, and Russian soldiers with vodka in the daytime, and muddy roads that lead nowhere. The locals say, "We ate sawdust bread too." The newcomers say, "Be glad you even had a cellar." Fists fly outside the ration shops. A man with a cart is turned away from 3 houses with a sentence, "We are full." The arithmetic of scarce jobs is old math with new variables. The factory needs 10 men. 35 line up. 27 have papers that say they have no how. All of them have stomachs. Karl watches the faces on the platform when a train labelled Breslau pulls in with doors hanging open. He lifts a child under both armpits and passes her down to her mother, who nods once and moves on. It becomes routine. The company's clerks stamp new tickets to places that will not take people. The station becomes a machine that produces motion without arrival. The occupation authorities watch for violence. There are memos about expulsions and the danger of reprisals. There is the hard law, and then the soft instruction. An American colonel tells a German mayor, "House them." The mayor says, "Where?" A British officer in a nearby town writes in his notebook, later filed in the Imperial War Museum, "Resources stretched beyond any rational allocation." The mathematics of the possible defines morality when the furnace is cold. Karl becomes a man quickly. His body is older than his papers. He is 19 in 1947. He is 21 in 1949. His handwriting stabilizes into a neat block. The company raises him. It gives him a bed and a hard pillow and a key to a locker and a schedule on the wall. It teaches him the grammar of tonnage and the alphabet of stations and the verbs of an engine. He sits for an apprenticeship exam in 1948, watches a man write Deutsche Reichsbahn on the top of the paper, watches another man cross it out softly and write Deutsche Bundesbahn, the name that will become official in the Federal Republic in 1949. The company does not change in the night. It changes in letterhead order. For a time, the stamp says one thing in the morning and another in the afternoon. The continuity is of crews and tools and dispatchers who know the line curves near Firth because the soil is soft. Currency reform comes on 20 June 1948. In the morning, people carry Reichsmarks to the black market. In the afternoon, they carry Deutsche Marks in their pockets, 40 DM per person. 80 for married couples. Allied soldiers step into the black market at the station and watch prices change in real time. Cigarettes begin to lose their currency power. Bread is still bread, but the lines shorten. The morning after currency reform, shop windows fill. The shelves were not empty because there was nothing. They were empty because money meant nothing. It is a lesson in arithmetic. The value of numbers only matters if someone believes in them. The Marshall Plan is a phrase. The ships out of New Orleans and Baltimore are facts. In 1948 and 1949, cargoes are appointed to cities. An occupation report lists quantities going to the U.S. zone: grain, coal, tractors, machine tools. The men at the yard call it AID, then ERP for European Recovery Program. Then they stop naming it. The cranes lift crates. The wagons carry them. The old factories reopen. New walls rise in the old footprints. Karl walks past a fabrication plant that used to make ball bearings and now makes parts for farm machinery. The smell of cutting oil replaces the smell of burnt paper. The younger men begin to buy suits, or at least jackets not stitched at home. The women buy shoes that fit. The war goes on in the kitchen, and it goes on in the court. Amnesties are passed. The Basic Law comes into force on 23 May 1949. There is a government in Bonn. The Chancellor speaks of renewal and responsibility. In offices, men nod. The 131er Gazettes of 1951, the law for the status of persons falling under Article 31 of the Basic Law, brings back thousands of former civil servants, including former party members, into the public administration. The mathematics of staffing meets the mathematics of the Cold War. Stability is a defense. The East is a threat. The Americans want a wall of ordnance and bureaucracy between them and the Soviets. The files in Bundesarchiv show the percentages. The new state depends on old hands. The moral arithmetic of this is recursive. It feeds on itself and denies itself and moves trains on schedule. Karl becomes a dispatcher. Quote, he sits at a desk with a clock and a telephone and a map of the lines drawn in thick black ink. He speaks in compressed syntax to men on a line that crackles. He writes down numbers in boxes. When accidents happen, it is because math failed. When accidents do not happen, it is because math held. He is good at the job because he does not take shortcuts. He has seen shortcuts collapse. In 1952, he is given a new set of paper forms with Deutsche Bundesbahn printed in blue at the top. He files the old ones in a box labeled "Use if needed." It is a phrase that describes a century. The psychology of the city smooths. It also hardens. The public commemorations are careful. They are literate with omission. There are plaques for the dead of 1943 and 1944. There are memorial days for bombings and for the people who did not come back from the East. There is a day for the expellees. The Charta der Deutschen Heimatvertriebenen is issued in Stuttgart in August 1950. It speaks of rights and losses. It speaks of homeland and the will to rebuild. It does not speak of what the Germans did in the places they left. Schoolbooks do not mention numbers on arms. They mention numbers of aircraft over Hamburg and the number of expellees who slept under wagons on nights when the rain came in sideways. The arithmetic of memory partitions facts by decade. An Allied psychological report in 1950 is blunt. The emphasis in German public discourse has shifted to German suffering. The new state needs consent. It cannot demand it through fear. It must earn it through wages and roofs. The first signs of the Wirtschaftswunder are not cheers. They are compliances. Men show up to work on time. Women clean windows that are whole. The trains run with more cars than last year. The platforms are full of men with lunch pails and boys with satchels. Contact with victims recedes as the DP camps empty. In 1947 and 1948, transports leave for Palestine, the United States, Canada, Australia. Some remain. A file in a Bavarian district office records the dispute over the slow transfer of housing from DP use back to German civilians. The persistence of non-repatriable DPs, people who cannot or will not go back to the places the Germans made impossible, becomes a paperwork problem. A Jewish teacher in Fürth writes in a letter preserved in Yad Vashem that he hears children playing outside his window in German and that it makes him tired. The railway carries him away in 1948. Karl watches the train and writes down the number. He keeps the number in the ledger and the feeling in the notebook. Denial has prose. It becomes conventional. We knew nothing. We heard something. We were afraid to ask. We just wanted to live. Selective memory is a system. It has incentives and penalties. It offers acceptance to those who join its grammar. It offers punishment to those who speak the wrong sentence at the wrong time. Karl remembers the dangerous lines in the notebook and does not repeat them. He learns to write in the safe manner of the clerk. He writes, "Train arrived 11,002, load, grain, load intact." He writes, "Mechanic absent due to illness." He writes, "Personnel shortage in segments BD." He does not write, "Herr S. was SA." He files that in his head, and it lives there for 40 years. The Cold War is present at the station. The tracks that run east are now not just lines on a map, but boundaries. The Deutsche Bundesbahn stops at the border near Hof. The Deutsche Reichsbahn continues in the German Democratic Republic. The names are the same and are not the same. Karl notes that a wagon with DR markings must be exchanged at the border with documented seals. He knows that seals are a kind of essay written in lead. He knows that a broken seal is an accusation. The mathematics of trust becomes a matter of lead and twine. In 1953, they hang a plaque in the station in memory of the victims of the night of August 1943. It lists the names of railwaymen who died in the raids. Men who were under wagons, men who were in signal towers, men who were in the yard office writing numbers when the roof fell in. There is a speech. The man who gives it has a past that the files call Mitläufer. No one mentions that the trains he dispatched in 1942 had different labels. Karl stands in the crowd and watches the man. He does not clap, and he does not clap. He keeps his hands in his pockets on the keys of his locker and feels the ridges. The economy grows. In 1955, the word Wirtschaftswunder appears in headlines with graphs. The toiletries in stores change. There are colors now where there were grays. German cars appear on streets, Beetles and Borgwoods. Railroad electrification reaches sections near Nuremberg in the late 1950s, and the changing of signal boxes to metal cabinets becomes a fact of his workday. The boys who apprenticed with him have children. The children have schoolbooks that present the recent past as if it were a landscape in another country. A Bundesarchiv record of curricula lists chapters: the Weimar Republic, the rise of the Nazis, the war, the reconstruction. The pages on camps are thin. The pages on bombings are thick. Public ceremony follows curricula. Newspapers print photographs of rebel women smiling as if they were not tired. The city sells postcards of ruins next to postcards of the new rat house. The before and after invites a pride that competes with shame and often wins. Karl marries in 1956. He marries a woman from Silesia who arrived with a suitcase in 1946 on a train he unloaded. She speaks in sentences that still hold the melody of the East. They have a child in 1958. The child grows in a two-room apartment in a building whose exterior wall has a slight lean visible if you stand on the opposite curb and stare long enough. The rent is not cheap, but it is paid. They eat meat on Sundays and sometimes Wednesday. The arithmetic of the house is simple. It is not just about calories, it is about words. At the table, the topic is the garden. It is the neighbor who plays the radio too loud. It is the price of coal. It is never the ledger in the drawer. Karl does not throw the ledger away. He keeps it in a bottom drawer under a stack of railway schedules that are out of date. He calls it his notebook, but it began as company property. He writes less in it as years pass. When he does write, the lines are the same kind of dangerous. We made a state out of paper and trains. We agreed not to ask certain questions in exchange for bread. The tracks never forget where they led. He does not show it to his wife. He does not show it to his son. He thinks a ledger is useless to a child. In 1961, the wall goes up in Berlin. In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis makes radios crackle in kitchens. Karl is a man at a control board watching a white disc move along a black line representing a train, and he knows that his part of the Cold War is to keep trains running to feed people who will send their sons to the border. He knows that his job is not to be a hero, but to be a reliable man in a reliable room. He has no patience for men who want to lecture him on abstractions. He keeps the schedule. It is his morality. The 1960s bring trials. The Frankfurt Auschwitz trials begin in 1963. They are on the radio. Afterwards, in 1965, a poll says many Germans prefer to draw a line under the past. The ledger is a past that resists lines. Karl reads newspaper articles with names he recognizes as words that once came stamped on the sides of wagons. He writes in the notebook, "A court is a timetable for truth." He writes, "The cars that bring witnesses are clean. It is not eloquence, it is logistics." The company changes again as the economy changes. Freight modalities shift. Trucks take some cargo. The railway fights to keep market share. The Bundesbahn becomes a subject of parliamentary budgets. The mathematics of deficits and subsidies appears in newspapers. The man in the dispatch office who still wears a tie on Fridays becomes a figure in an argument about modernity. The younger employees call him Uncle. He is 40 now, then 50. His hair thins. He watches the old signal boxes be replaced, the old levers removed, the old men retired. The schoolbooks change in the mid-1970s. A Bundesarchiv file on education reform shows thicker sections on the Holocaust, on persecution, on the structures that made complicity ordinary. His son comes home and asks questions that are not rhetorical. He asks about the ledger on the bottom shelf. He asks about what, exactly, the company did between 1933 and 1945. He asks about trains with names he learned on a school trip to a memorial. The conversation is halting. Karl is not proud. He is not ashamed like a photograph. He is tired. He says, "I wrote numbers." The son asks, "What did the numbers mean?" Karl looks at him and thinks that the new morality has no patience for logistics. He brings out the notebook. He reads aloud the opening line in a voice that surprises himself with its steadiness. His son leaves for university in 1977. He studies engineering. He insists it is because he likes math. "It is not because of trains," he says. The father hears the truth and the lie in the sentence. He knows that the arithmetic of inheritance is complicated. Karl retires in 1989. A wall falls in November that year. He watches it on television. He watches people with sledgehammers and then with hammers as small as school hammers tapping at concrete and laughing. He thinks the train line to Berlin will be open. He thinks the company will be one again. He thinks there will be ledgers joined. He is asked to stay on part-time in a personnel office to help process the integration of records between East and West. He opens files with Deutsche Reichsbahn at the top in faded ink and Deutsche Bundesbahn in bolder type, and he sits at a desk and helps put names into computers. The files have not forgotten the categories from 40 years before. They say Mitläufer. They say belastet, crossed out, then minder belastet. They say exempted. They say exempted. They say post-reinstatement. He sees a life as an arc defined by stamps. He knows that a man is not a stamp. He knows that a society is a stack of stamps that allow men to eat. He writes again. 9. November 1990. Nuremberg. Cookbook on the table. Ledger in the drawer. "We built a present with parts from an unacceptable past," he writes. "We eat from plates that were stacked in cellars during the raids. We board trains whose tracks were laid by men with different uniforms. The sentences are less afraid now. The danger is no longer an occupation policeman or a neighbor who will stop bringing over soup. The danger now is indifference." He writes because he does not want to forget. He writes because he wants to explain to a future what mathematics we did to get here. In the 1990s, the Bundesarchiv makes more files available.